page on the calendar, whatever the idiom you want to use for that. We're starting anew. We're starting a new year. But with that time, with that in mind, people do things like set New Year's resolutions. People do things like this is a great starting point to take off on some new venture. This is a great time to incorporate new habits, all those things. And we can do all those things. And I'm not saying any of that is bad or wrong or that we shouldn't do those things. But what I want to look at today is how we can, as Christians in 2025, moving into 2026, how we can have a focused approach to a new year. And I think this time of year can be a little bit confusing. I mean, we've got the hustle and bustle, right? We've got the holidays. We've got pretty much, it seems like from Thanksgiving through the end of the year, you kind of blink and do one of these and it's done. You don't know what's really going on half the time. Is you're busy, you're running to this thing, the other thing, this event, this party, this family gathering, whatever it is, and we can be putting a lot of miles on the car depending on where you're going. But it seems like we've got this breakneck speed that's kind of forcing us into a lot of times some silly habits potentially. We're doing things we wouldn't normally do. I would say majority of Americans, I don't want to speak for anybody in here, majority of Americans don't do a fantastic job at budgeting Christmas. They just kind of get wrapped up in the holidays and, here a little, there a little, and then credit cards are racked up. The amount of spending that happens at this time of year is kind of crazy sometimes. Now, hopefully, we're doing a little better than that. Hopefully, we're being good stewards financially, and hopefully we're being responsible and enjoying our time, but being financially responsible. And in those things, I'm saying all this to say, it's almost like we just act or do or live or spend or whatever, however we want, all the way up until December 31st, and then we just hit the brakes on and expect that we're going to have a complete 180 because the calendar switched to January 1. Because the calendar flipped over and it's now 2026, now all the bad habits that I've been practicing over the last 6 weeks are somehow just going to magically vanish. Now all the things that I've just done, I'm going to start this weight loss program. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to change the way I eat. I'm going to exercise every day. But we just spent the last 3 weeks gorging ourselves, and now we've starting out worse than we would have if we had never gone in the holiday season. This would be a weird time. It can be a weird time of year. But what I want to look at is making sure that as we approach a new year, I'm not here to tell you what your resolutions should be. I'm not here to tell you if you should or shouldn't have resolutions. I'm not going to give you a list of everything you should or shouldn't do. But what I want to do tonight is look biblically at how to have a focused approach toward a new year. So the first thing I want to bring to our attention is this, that focus begins with direction. Focus begins with direction. Now, whether you choose to set New Year's resolutions or not, it is a very wise time to have a personal reset. It's very easy. Why do I say it's a wise time? Because it's easy. Because everybody's doing it. Now, do we always want to do things that everybody's doing? No. But if there was ever a time when you just declare, I'm going to do something different, or I'm going to make a change, this is the least awkward time to do it. This is the least awkward time to do it. People will understand. People will be like, oh, okay, I get it. So a good time for us as we turn this corner, as we turn this page, this chapter, this leaf, whatever you want to say, as we turn to a new year, it's a great time for us to self-assess. Say, where am I at versus where do I want to be or where should I be? And we can take that spiritually. We can take that physically. We can take that mentally. We can take that financially. But what I'm wanting us to do is make sure that as we're looking, we need to have a focus. We need to have a focus. And focus begins with direction. It's been famously said that if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. And a person with no goals has never let themselves down. No, that's not true. That's not true. So you need to have something that we're aiming at. We need to have something that we're looking towards. As children of God, this can be very simple, very easy to understand that maybe I want to be a little bit closer to God this year. That's always a good goal. I think we should always aim to be a little bit closer to God today than I was yesterday. And I tell you what, if we do that, we're going to surprise ourselves. We're going to come a really long way. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. We'll look at Proverbs chapter 16, verse 3. It tells us, "Commit your works unto the Lord, and your thoughts shall be established." It says, "Commit your works unto the Lord, and your thoughts shall be established." You say, well, sometimes I just have a hard time, thinking about the right things. Sometimes my thoughts just drift. Sometimes my mind just kind of goes off, and I have a hard time staying focused. Whether you want to say things, put labels like ADD or ADHD, or whether you just want to say like I don't focus well, or whatever you want to say, however you want to view it, the important thing is, if we look to the Scriptures, it tells us how we can help ourselves in these situations. Well, I just have a short attention span when it comes to my prayer time or to my devotion, and I get sidetracked too easily. Proverbs tells us, he says, if you commit your works unto the Lord, then your thoughts will be established. So what's the best way for me to help my thought process as I come into a new year, or really any time? This wisdom of Proverbs isn't isolated to December 31st and the first week of January. This works all the time. If I commit my works, in other words, if I set a goal, like I said, I want to be a little bit more like Jesus today than I was yesterday. And that's my goal. I've committed my work. I'm going to put effort towards this. And whatever I'm putting effort towards, naturally, I'm going to be thinking about what I'm doing. How am I going to take those steps? What efforts do I need to be putting in? Now, you might call this planning or making a to-do list or having a structure. You might call this a lot of things. But Proverbs simply says, if you've got your mind made up to a task at hand, then your thoughts will be established. And how much better, or what better way could we have our thoughts established towards a task at hand than having the task of getting a little closer to Jesus? Than having the task of being a little bit more diligent in my walk with Him? Than having the task of, I want to do a little bit better in my devotion life. I want to do a little bit better in my faithfulness. I want to do a little bit better in my working towards whatever I'm working towards. And so Proverbs teaches us, when you commit your works to the Lord, your thoughts then are established. So when we commit our plans to Him, our focus stops being about willpower, and it starts being about alignment. You hear about New Year's resolutions or forming new habits, and it's all about, well, you got to have some pretty serious willpower. You got to have real strong willpower, and there's a little bit of that to it. But when we focus on committing our works to the Lord and let our thoughts be established based off that, it stops being so much about willpower. How strong am I in this moment? How diligently can I pursue after this task? And it becomes more, how can I align myself with the will and the Word of God? And I promise you, no matter how far you take that task, it's not going to be a bad thing. You're not going to be worse off. Because it stops being about what I can do, and it starts being about how can I get aligned. A new year brings options. It brings goals. It might bring some pressures too, but it also gives us an opportunity to find clarity. Clarity comes when we first ask God, where are you leading me? Where are you leading me? And our focus grows when our direction is set by Him. That's what Proverbs means when he says, commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. Our focus grows when our direction is set by Him. So, question. Has anybody set any goals? I'm not going to ask you to tell me what they are. Has anybody set any goals yet? Couple people have set some goals. All right. Whether you've set goals yet, whether you haven't set goals yet, whether you're planning to, here's what I want to ask you, what goals have I already set, or what goals am I going to set? And here's the question. Have I prayed about them? Have I prayed about them? I encourage you today, whatever your goals are, whatever your thoughts or your intentions, whether New Year's or any time in life, I encourage you, seek the Lord in that. Seek the Lord in that. God, this is what I'm thinking, but what would you have me to do? What direction would you like me to go? Heard a man say one time, we spend a lot of, he was talking about missions work and outreach efforts, and he said, we spend a lot of time planning what we want to do and then praying that God would bless it. He said, what if we flip the process and ask, God, what will you bless? And then I move my efforts towards that. It's an interesting way of thinking about it. Maybe I've got this plan for what I want to do in 2026. Maybe I've got this idea of where I want to be professionally or spiritually or otherwise, and then I'm just going to say, God, help me to get there. Well, that's one approach. Or before I even put pen to paper or thought to the process, I could say, God, where do you want me to be in 2026? And then I could spend my effort, I could spend my work, I could spend my thought, I could spend my time working towards where I know God wants me to be. Focus begins with direction. And if your direction is from God, it'll always get you in the right place. The second thing we look at is this: let go of what distracts you. Let go of what distracts you. You're like, well, that sounds obvious. It does sound obvious because it is obvious. But how many would say it's one of the easiest things to do? Nobody, right? It's called distraction for a reason. It's called distraction for a reason. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1, very popular portion of Scripture, says, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run this race with patience that is set before us. So he says, even in the middle of this race, even in the middle of this journey, this task at hand, right? We've got a purpose, and Hebrews gives us this picture of this race that we're running. We're compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, kind of giving the imagery of those that have gone before, kind of rooting you on or cheering you on, and they're filling the grandstands. And you can see the way this imagery is painted in books, in sermons, and illustrations. But the idea is not just so much about everybody's cheering me on. The idea is more about, even if I have people cheering me on, if my focus is awry, I'm not going to end up where I need to be. If I'm running a race, but I'm so much worried about what's going on behind me, I'm going to end up running backwards. That's difficult. You're definitely not going to be as fast. You're definitely not going to see any potential trips, hazards, pitfalls, things that are coming along the way. We have to let go of what distracts us. If I want to have this goal, this thing that I'm aiming at, this resolution, whatever it is, if I have this idea that I'm going to be closer to God this year than I was last year, but I don't have any direction to it, it's going to be very hard to achieve. But also, if I have this goal and I have this idea and I say I'm going to get closer to God this year than I was last year, but I'm still going to entertain all these distractions, it's going to be a difficult journey. It's going to be a difficult task. This verse talks about laying aside anything that slows us down. It's not just talking about sin. I'm not just saying, like, watch out for all the sins. There's a lot of things that aren't sin that are distractions. There's a lot of things that aren't sins that are distractions. So anything that's slowing me down, anything that's getting in the way, anything that's stopping me from being who God is calling me to be, that's what Hebrews is talking about. Lay aside the things that slow you down. A focused life often requires saying no to good things so that we can say yes to God things. That's interesting. It's an interesting way to phrase it. Saying no to good things so that we can say yes to God things. Amen. Where does God want me to be? Question you ask yourself if you're trying to get this mindset, this mentality, if you're trying to understand this. What habits, what commitments, what mindsets are pulling my attention away from God? Again, this doesn't always necessarily mean it's sinful. It could just be not lined up with where God is wanting you to be this year. We can have the best of intentions with our goals. We can have godly direction for our future and our purpose. But if we don't work on getting rid of the distractions, we can miss a whole lot in our lives. Goals, opportunities, direction, the voice of God can miss a lot of things if there's too many distractions. I saw a clip from what I'll call a YouTube pastor. You know, I don't want to say too much, but this man was relaying a story. His kids were in a different room listening to music, and they kept yelling for him, "Dad," and he'd respond, "What?" "Dad, what? Dad, what?" And he could hear them, but they couldn't hear him because the music was too loud. We get, sometimes my wife will shout for me across the house, "TJ, babe, hey." And I'll be like, "What?" She's like, "Come here, I don't want to shout." "Well, you started it." No, I'm just kidding. But we can get in these moments, and it's like this with these kids. We can get in these moments where we feel like we're crying out to God. "God, I need help. I need direction. I need answer to prayer. I need wisdom. I need this. I need the other. I need your help. God, where are you? God, where are you?" And he's answering us the whole time, but we can't hear because there's so much distraction. We can't see direction because there's so much distraction. We can't hear the answer because we're too worried about what comes next. We can't hear him answer because I've got all the other outside noise and distractions that are clouding my vision, that are clouding my spiritual vision, that are clouding my hearing. And we're like, "God, where are you?" And he's like, "I'm still here. If you just open the door, I'm right here. If you just take a step towards me, it'll make this whole conversation a lot easier." But it can be very easy for us in our flesh to say, "You know what, I want to keep doing me. I want to keep doing what I want to do, but I want God to be at my beck and call." And the thing about God, he's just gracious enough that a lot of times he is. A lot of times he will still help, and he will still answer. But just because he's answering doesn't mean that we're hearing him. We say, "God, why haven't you spoken to me?" He's like, "I've been talking to you. But you're too busy listening to all the other voices. You're too busy listening to all the other things. You're too busy chasing after all the other things. There's too many distractions." So we need to have our focus, and our focus begins with direction. Then we need to let go of what distracts us. Then we want to focus on faithful steps, not the whole year. Focus on faithful steps, not the whole year. Oftentimes in either business or church leadership or education, you'll hear an acronym SMART for a guideline to setting goals. Anybody heard about setting SMART goals? Yep. It means something that's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Set a SMART goal. A SMART goal is something that's specific. If you just say, "I want to have more money this year than I did last year," well, okay. It's not specific. Or if you say, "I want to save $10,000 this year," that's specific. And if you can, we take donations. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding. We do take donations, but set something smart. So first it needs to be specific. We need to know what we're aiming for, right? This is what we were talking about focus on direction. It has to be specific. It also needs to be measurable. You need to be able to check in and say, "How am I doing?" It needs to be attainable. Now, if your current prayer life, let's say you want to work on praying more in 2026. If your current prayer life is 4 or 5 minutes a day, it would be really foolish to say, I'm going to pray 6 hours a day in 2026. That's not attainable. We haven't worked ourselves up to that. We might do it one day. We might do it another day. We might get through a couple days, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's not attainable to do that. So set smart goals. Set, yes, specific, yes, measurable, but set something that's attainable. One of the reasons people give up on their goals so easily is because they feel like they're never going to reach them. You know what? I'm going to lose 150 pounds this year. Whoa! That's a big number. And we're like, well, how are you going to do it? Well, I'm not too sure. Okay. It's got to be something that's attainable. Something that's attainable. Set reasonable goals. It also needs to be something that's relevant. Set something relevant. For instance, if your objective, if your resolution for 2026 is, I want to have a better walk with God this year than I did last year. And so one of my goals is going to be to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy at least once a month. What? That's not relevant. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't point me towards where I want to go. So your goal needs to be relevant. In order to be a smart goal, it needs to be relevant. Maybe I want to read a chapter a day. Whatever it's got to be, make it relevant to what you're actually trying to accomplish. And then finally, it needs to be time-bound. I need to be able to look at it and say, am I on track? Am I accomplishing it? Am I ahead of schedule? Am I behind schedule? If you've never read the Bible through in a year, there's a program called the Bread Program that Pentecostal Publishing House puts out. There's also all kinds of apps. If you've got like YouVersion is one of the most popular Bible apps on your phone. It's very free. They've got all sorts of devotions and studies and all these things. I can't attest to the theology of all them, but there's a lot of good information. One of them is even reading the Bible through in a year. One of them is reading through the New Testament in a year. You know, and it'll set you up for how to accomplish that. And you can check it off as you go. So you know, am I on track? Am I behind schedule? Am I ahead of schedule? Am I doing good? Am I not doing good? That's what we mean when we say smart goals. But this all comes down to this. We've got to focus, as I said, focus on faithful steps, not the entire year. Sometimes when we're looking at big goals, big projects, big changes, big life events, we can get lost in the big picture of it all and begin to feel overwhelmed. For instance, if you're looking at breaking a bad habit, it might be daunting to think about, I'm never going to do X again. That might be a challenge. That might be difficult to say, I'm never going to do this thing again. Or you can tell yourself, you start getting to thinking about it, and you're like, so I can't ever do this again for my whole entire life. Wow, sure, it's a good idea, it's a good thing to pursue, but that's a big way to look at it. That's a difficult way to look at it. It can be a lot to process, it can be a lot to think about. Whereas if I start by saying, you know what, I bet I can go 2 hours without social media, without alcohol, without a cigarette, without drugs, whatever it is, without soda. I bet I can go 2 hours without this thing. That seems reasonable. Seems easy to do. But you know what? If you do that, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, you do it again, you do that 5 times, that's already 10 hours of your day. That's the majority of your waking day. And just like that, one day's done. That's a lot easier way to look at than saying, you know what, this whole year I'm not going to have a single something I'm addicted to. That's a challenge. Turn that the opposite. I'm going to pray. I'm going to make it I'm going to pray every single day this year. Awesome. Start one day at a time. You start one day at a time. You start one prayer at a time. The scripture tells us in Matthew chapter 6, verse 34, he says, "Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." There's enough going on in this life. There's enough things, there's enough distractions, there's enough things to cloud our vision that I don't have to worry about all the way down the road. I don't need to necessarily look at the end of the year. I don't need to necessarily look at, 365 days from right now, I'm going to be a totally different person. It might be a good goal to have, but if you're looking at that as your mission, then it can seem a little daunting. Whereas if you just look at one day at a time. Simple fact is this: God doesn't ask us to manage an entire year at once. He invites us to be faithful today. He invites us to serve Him today. He invites us to talk to Him today. He invites us to make life choices today. He invites us into His presence today. He gives us all these things that we can do one day at a time. Focus grows when we concentrate on daily obedience rather than overwhelming outcomes. That's the best way to stay focused. It's the best way to stay focused on daily obedience rather than the overwhelming outcome. Question to ask yourself today is, what is one faithful step that God is asking me to take right now? Because here's the reality. You don't get a 40-year relationship with God in a day. You don't get a 40-year walk with God in a week. Not a month, not even a year. You know how that happens? One day at a time. One decision at a time. One moment at a time. One service at a time. Scripture talks, Jesus asked, said, which of you can, by taking thought, add 1 cubit to your stature? Who can make yourself grow by thinking about it? Well, nobody. Who can say, you know what? I'm going to be a 70-year faithful saint of God today. How? How are you going to do that? You can't. But what you can do is say, I'm going to be faithful to God today. And when you wake up tomorrow, you can say, I'm going to be faithful to God today. And after, do the math, 26,000 days, whatever it is, then you've had a 70-year relationship with God. Or at the end of 365, then you've had a 1-year relationship with God. Wherever you're at, wherever you're starting from. We don't look at, you know what, I'm gonna raise up 5th generation Pentecostals in my heritage. That's awesome. But what can you do about it? You can serve God today. You can raise your kids to serve God today. And guess what you'll do tomorrow? You'll do it again today. And you'll do it again today. Now, I'm not saying we don't have plans. I'm not saying we don't have goals. I'm not saying we don't reach for things or try and attain things or try and better ourselves. But what I'm saying is we don't overwhelm ourselves with thinking about the end game of what I'm going to attain multiple years or months or weeks or sometimes even days down the road. We do it one day at a time. If you want to lose weight, if you want to get in shape, if you want to build muscle, that's done one day at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. If you want to be closer to God, it's the exact same thing. One day at a time, one moment at a time, one choice at a time. Lastly, I'll tell us this. The fourth thing and final thing would be to keep your eyes on Christ. We talked about focus at the beginning. Talked about direction. We talked about making smart goals. We talked about getting rid of distraction. Colossians chapter 3, verse 2 says, set your affections on things above, not on things on the earth. True focus isn't just productivity, it's perspective. When our minds stay centered on Christ, our choices, our goals, our priorities, they begin to naturally reflect Him. We were talking a couple months ago about holiness and about being dedicated, separated unto God for a purpose. We talked about when I'm focused on God rather than the world, I'm gradually taking steps towards Him because that's where I'm focused. And just like this, whatever my goal is, whatever my eyes are set to, Colossians said it, set your affections on things above, not on the things of the earth. Where are my eyes? That's where I'm going to gravitate towards. I've used this illustration before. When I'm driving, we got a drive through the country, get home, and there's stuff, there's birds, there's eagles, there's sunsets, there's farms, there's all kinds of stuff. And, looking at the two lines, it gets a little boring from time to time. So I'm looking this way, I'm looking that way, and, thankfully, I'm thankful for rumble strips. They remind you that, you should probably pay attention. You should probably pay attention. You should probably focus. I won't say the other thing that reminds me that I should focus, but there's a lot that you can just get lost. Amen. And you can get lost this way, and you can get lost the other way, and they go, oh, you see that? You see the beauty of God's creation? That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You see that bald eagle over there? It's not a bad thing. You see that farm over there? You see that sunset? That's not a bad thing. None of those are bad things. But if my focus stays on that rather than what's in front of me, I'm going to end up off the road. That's what we're talking about. Distractions aren't always sinful. It's just taking your eyes off of what they should be on. So keep your eyes on Christ. And this might sound similar or echoing of point number 2 about getting rid of distractions, but it's actually so much more important than that. It's not just getting rid of distractions, but it's ridding yourself of distractions and finding a new focus. Talk about how the Bible tells us to put off the old man and then put on the new man. If you just put off the old man and don't put on a new man, then you're spiritually naked. You're unclothed. You're unprotected. You're uncovered. Just like if I'm trying to set a new goal, if I'm trying to have a new focus, if I'm trying to be a better or a different person, a changed person this year, and I just say, you know what, I'm going to rid myself of all these distractions. Somebody that's conditioned to being distracted doesn't know what to do with the empty time. That's just a reality. That's human nature. That's why people that have struggled with addiction or drinking, they need to find something else to do in those moments. People that struggle with smoking, they might need to find something else to hold in their hand because it's a habit. And if I get rid of it, then I'm constantly reminded that I don't have what I'm used to having. So I need to hold on to something else. I'll hold on to a pen, or I'll keep a toothpick in the mouth, or whatever the case is. We find these different ways to deal with things. And it's no different in our practical life or in our spiritual walk, that if I start ridding myself of distractions, I'm going to get bored and start wondering what to do with my time. And it won't be very long before I pick up either the old distraction or a new one. So it's important that I, rid myself of distraction, but I find a new focus. I find a new focus and a new direction. Let's stand. Lord Jesus, I'm thankful for this day today. I'm thankful, God, that you've given us a moment, you've given us a time to look to your word. You've given us some challenges, you've given us some direction, some ideas, some things that'll help.